You ready? You good?
I'm
Okay.
ready.
All right. Uh, Thank you, Thomas, for joining me tonight. This is Thomas Mooneagle. We met years ago when we opened the Salt Cave. It was probably early 2016.
Okay.
And he did a little bit of work. He did a little bit of work with us in doing classes, specifically Qigong classes for us at the cave. That was a lot of fun. But you have a background in shamanism and wanted to see what you could tell us about, just to start with how you began your healing journey and what that looked like for you.
Well, sure. I started, oddly enough, with doing like readings for people when I was like 14. Um, I bought a deck of tarot cards and I took them to school with me and I read for everybody. And I did probably thousands of readings over those 4 years of high school. And, I studied with I read a lot of books. I started meditating. Um, I got involved in different groups of people that were practicing, I guess, what more of a hermetic tradition or ceremonial tradition. And then I had a major illness um, in about 2003 that really it was so serious that I nearly died from it. And when I came out of that, everything was heightened for me. Like my emotional responses were heightened, my sensitivity to energy was heightened, and and found out that I had a lot of allergies to particular types of medicines. And so I started looking for other ways to, stay healthy, stay strong. And, I started with Reiki at one point, learned Reiki, and I still do that mostly for myself and for some loved ones. But I also, I started working fairs, reading for people, and I ran into shamanic teachers, and then also, discovered I heard about journeying and tried it on my own, but I got to go to a series of free classes with one of my other teachers down at Unity. I guess that was back in 2007. And I started studying. So I have two different shamanic teachers. One's more of core shamanism, which looks at the commonalities across the whole world of different shamanic practitioners. And then there's one that's specific to South American shamanism, particularly in the Peruvian and the Andes, um, the Misa tradition, using portable stone altar wrapped in cloth for healing work. And so my practice kind of blends those, and then also some quantum consciousness and consciousness technologies that I learned through taking different seminars from various teachers as well. So it's kind of blended all together over time, and it's become its own thing.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
That's a lot.
but yeah, it's been it's been like a 17-year journey to get to where I am now. And it's kind of weird to look back, that starting, but a lot of times that starting off from a serious illness is a lot of times what happens with a lot of shamanic practitioners is they'll have that healing crisis that sort of thrusts them in onto their path.
So, what was that like for you? I mean, you said 17 years. You must have been pretty young when this happened. And I've heard this before about like people having an illness and then, but what was that specifically like for you? If without divulging too
Without
much personal information, of course.
Right. Well, what happened was I was misdiagnosed consistently, and so I was being treated for the wrong thing, and the treatment that I was getting was actually making me weaker. So oddly enough, what I almost died of was viral pneumonia, which right now I'm having flashbacks.
Oh, yeah. That's lovely.
So yeah, I know. So a lot of people who say, "Oh, I'm fine. Don't be worried about." Like, I've had something like this before, and I'm going to tell you, it's not the way you want to go out.
Yeah. I'm sure
So
that's bringing a lot up right now.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
anything that was for, I think, and this is not just for me, for everybody right now, because our routines have been interrupted, because the patterns of our lives are not the same, um, and what we relied on is no longer there. Anything that was sitting in ourselves that is not out, that isn't in, centered, that isn't in its alignment with the rest of us, is really coming up right now and right in our face, and we can't really ignore it.
Yeah.
So because we're left with, there is that saying, wherever you go, there you are. And this really is bringing that kind of to the next level. um, at the end of the day, you can change just about, if you change all the stuff in your outer world, and not that that's not important, because it is as well. We live in this world as well as the one, but if you change all of that without any change happening on the inside, you're you're only gonna get so far, because you're left with yourself and any insecurities that you had, anything that you hadn't healed, any grudges you've carried, any shame that you've carried, or inner emotional wounds or trauma. That is still going to be there, and it will be with you always until you have somehow transmuted it. And that's a lifelong process. It's never we get to a point where, well, I'm pretty good now, this is awesome, I'm pretty cool, you know I'm awesome, I don't need to do any more inner work because I'm complete.
Yeah.
um, and when I was younger, I may have thought, oh, I'm going to transcend this, and do this, and then everything will be fine. And the problem with that is you're waiting to give yourself approval or love until you've done that thing.
Hmm.
And of course, you're never there. So you never get that love and approval from yourself.
Yeah.
So
That's
that was a long answer, but I think it kind of it's the context, really.
right.
Um,
Yeah. It's really relevant to what's happening today. And my second question to you was, why is this work important to holistic health? And I think like you answered a lot of that, but like, why, why would this be something that somebody would be interested in right now? Like, what is it that you can offer in that regard, that's
well,
helpful to our community?
yeah, a lot of what I do is removing patterns and then really us that aren't ours, that we're carrying and we're identifying with as if they are. We're confused. We think this is what I am, when really, no, it's not. And um, getting back to who we are, because it can be right now we feel, I think, collectively very disoriented,
Hmm.
because we've had so much external focus of, this is what I am, this is what I do. And we run kind of on autopilot, rather than being inwardly directed. And that's not to say that, you know, forget your job, forget, responsibilities. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that there needs to be a balance and an interplay to where you are self-directed. Um, and, and you know who you are no matter what it is you're doing. And I think that is where we're feeling so much anxiety, is because we don't we are right now, because we're not doing what we normally do.
Yeah, right. We're all completely out of our routine, and it's
Mm-hmm.
giving us a chance to really look at that part of ourselves, our true selves, and
Mm-hmm.
how do we live in this world as that? So, like,
Yes.
what you do is to remove those blocks that may be preventing you from seeing that more clearly.
Yes. And, just the idea that, there's stuff that people put on us for good and or ill intent as we're
Like,
growing up.
labels or
Labels, ideas. And, I've always said that, a curse is a lie that we believe about ourselves.
that's great.
And so, I mean, and when that came into my, when that realization came, I was like, wow, yeah, that's really true. Because as we're growing up, And again, even from the most well-meaning people, they'll say something to us, trying to protect us, and
Mm-hmm.
yet the way that is received um, becomes a curse in a way. Like, oh, if you better do this, or no one's ever going to love you, or you better do, if you don't change your ways, you're never going to make it. You're
Yeah.
never going. You're not going to make enough money. You're not going to do this. You're not good enough at this, or you're just not good enough.
Right.
Um, and again, a lot of times those are habitual familial patterns.
Mm-hmm.
They're ancestral curses. The way that we handle upbringing, or bring, just our social interactions, and even enculturation as well. When we go to school, we have a certain things. Like, I always tell the story that I went to Catholic school for the first, like, 6 years or so. Well, after, let's see, kindergarten through third grade, basically. And one of the things was that talking was a sin,
Oh, oh,
because to get the kids to be quiet in class.
yeah, yeah.
And so you can see, and years later, I had so much trouble, like, speaking out, or getting up there and talking. I've somewhat got over it, as you can tell. But but that sort of thing where talking is, you just be quiet, right?
Yeah,
So
right.
things like that, and they're just, again, there are some things that are more extreme than that, but these are just, like I said, a lot of times it's not meant to be bad, but it just turns out that way. And sometimes it does, depending on what kind of upbringing you had and the people that were around and how kind and they were.
And yeah, how we take that in, right? So
Mhm.
what we do with that information, that's awesome. Um, what is shamanism? So like you talked about the two different backgrounds that you
Sure.
were trained in. Like, if you were just to tell somebody what shamanism is, what is it?
It is both a worldview and a set of practices. And so the worldview part is basically animistic, meaning the belief that everything is alive, everything has a spirit and some sort of consciousness, um, and that it's possible to communicate with that. So that is the basic, thing. That everything is alive, everything has a spirit. So
So everything being like anything solid matter, not necessarily like living things like trees or
yeah,
plants.
that
Any
exactly.
Okay,
Stone, desk, chair, car, anything.
gotcha. Thank you. Yeah.
So yeah. Now you can say, what am I going to do with talking to a chair? I'm like, well, I don't know if the chair is going to have any deep insights to your particular life,
Choose your subjects.
but it does have a spirit, and the thing you might learn is, like, that's not the chair for me.
Right.
Um, so that's the one half of it, and then the other is the set of practices, and the practices are learning how to communicate, learning how to send your consciousness forth into the different worlds that they talk about in shamanism. You've got the lower world, the middle world, and the upper world. And the lower world is kind of the place where the spirits of stones, plants, and animals and places. The upper place for your ancestors that have ascended and transcended the human condition, angelic figures, deity forms, master teachers and teachers and guides. And then the middle world is where we live. Well, we live in one of them. There's a bunch. So, but the difference between, like, the lower world has very dense vibration, very low vibration, but not low as in bad, low as in, like, a nice, warm, heavy blanket.
Hmm.
You know?
Hmm. Yeah.
And the up world is very light and airy and just, higher vibration and, more removed from the physical. And we're in between. So now, in the lower world and the upper world, no one can lie. The defining characteristic, I think, of the middle world is that we know people can lie here.
That's interesting. I've never heard that.
So yeah,
Yeah.
the middle world teaches us discernment, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because you don't have to worry about, animals don't worry about truth and lies. They just, they are what they are, right?
Right.
And the same thing once you get beyond and transcending the flesh, it's like, why lie? There's no, being truthful, there's no consequences for me being truthful. I don't have a body to worry about. So,
Just up here floating around.
exactly. Right.
You
Not worried
mentioned,
about,
do
yeah,
what? Sorry.
not worried about keeping a job.
Yeah. You mentioned the other worlds, and I assume like that we're a part of here in the middle world. Does that have to do with the quantum studies that you were referring to that you mentioned?
It does a little bit. Like you've got parallel worlds, parallel universes, but you also have like, if you think of a lot of folk tales and legends, there's this other realm that people sometimes will interact with. You think of fairy tales, things like that, these mythical creatures, and that's the realm of dreams is also a middle world.
Okay.
Well, it kind of the dream realm kind of crosses all three, really.
Hmm.
It's kind of,
I could see that. Yeah.
so it's, and that's what one of the reasons dreams are very useful tools for exploration and self knowledge, is because it is in contact with so much of what is out there. Um, but you can think of like what they talk about in Celtic tales of the other world, like Tir na Nog, the Isles of Eternal Youth, and the fairy realms and things like that.
Awesome.
Um, so they're possible. You think of them as other worlds that only occasionally come in contact with ours,
Hmm.
and only in certain places at certain times. And so we have a glimpse of something that seems so, in a sense, alien and mystical, because it's not normally there. It's not a normal experience. So,
And that's all encompassed within shamanism, or is that just?
um, you know, again, shamanism is something that was practiced worldwide at one point. So just about every culture, every religion at some point, if you go back far enough, every religious tradition has some sort of roots in that kind of practice.
Mhm.
Um, you can see this in a lot of the Far Eastern Taoist and Confucius and Kung Fu practices, using the animal styles and animal forms
Okay.
and embodying those qualities and strengths. I
Right.
mean, that's very prominent. And there is Taoist kind of more shamanic practices. They're a little bit, they're more like, ordered and I guess um, controlled because it's a long standing tradition. But a lot of, if you go back, it's more free flow.
Yeah.
Um,
That's awesome. So, and is that part of what inspired your work in Tai Chi and Qigong, or did just working in the two areas kind of
It's
like,
really funny because it's one of those things that, if I were planning this out, uh, I I couldn't have come up with a better way to do this because, like, the first thing, like I said, my first steps were like doing readings, and then doing some meditation, and then in 1997, I, you know, took a class in Tai Chi and studied with it like 7 years.
wow,
And just kept on, and so that's been a long standing practice, and it's been a good one because I can be very mental and up in my head, and that practice really brings you back down into the body. So one of the, and shamanism does that too. We go out, we seek sacred knowledge in this, but then it's all about bringing that back into the body, bringing it back into our everyday experience, and applying that in our lives, because there's no use seeking advice from spirit or seeking help if you're not going to follow through with any of it.
sure, sure. I think that must be why I love Qigong as well. I can live up here a lot. So it's nice to reground. Um, I often talk about mind, body, spirit as holistic healing,
Mhm.
but it really only refers to the self. So, what do you have to add about the environment or community, or speaking to how we live in an ecosystem in our daily work and personal
Sure.
lives?
Well, I think right now we're seeing exactly the impact of environment on the individual and then collectively the family and then the community, society, and humanity as a
Yeah.
whole.
Yeah.
We're really seeing the interconnectedness of, you know, our own well-being to others' well-being right now.
Yeah.
Um, as far as environment, what we do to the environment, we do to ourselves. um, because there's a mental disconnect that we have, that there's human beings and human culture, and then there's nature, but there's really not a separation. I mean, we are natural. I mean, we have bodies just like our animal friends. We are animals. We're mammals.
Hmm.
I know some people don't like to. I mean, I've been watching people lately. We are definitely animals.
There's no denying it these days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's really, I mean, we, and, you know, I think the biggest lie that we've had that has been kind of a curse, um, is this idea that we are rational beings. We're really not.
Mm.
I mean, we have the capacity to be rational, but on the whole, human beings are very impulsive and emotional and social creatures. And trying to overcome that or trying to deny that has really, created so many rifts in our culture for hundreds of years.
Is that something that you see, like, that you work on when you have clients? Is that something that you're kind of helping
Sure,
correct?
because a lot of will they'll disconnect from particular emotions. And I'm guilty of this too. And sometimes we all need to numb a little bit.
Yeah.
When we're all overwhelmed, sometimes it's like, okay, I can't deal with that right now. I need a break. And we need to click out and just, you know, be distracted. And that's fine. Um, but, I've noticed people, and this is a lot of people who have lost their voice, people who are, what I call the doormats of the world,
Hmm.
um,
Nobody wants
who
to be that.
nobody wants to be that, but they've been sold this idea that it's important to be nice all the time,
Yeah, I've been there.
and kind. And I've been there myself,
Yeah.
and I reach a point where I'm like, okay, no, this is not happening. And boom,
Yeah.
you take your power back. But a lot of people are just so disconnected, like they'll push all their anger, and I found it one time in a person, it was like out in their field, out in their energy field, this ball of anger, so I was like, that probably doesn't belong right there. And I reach out, oh, this is yours after all. Here, let me give it to you. It's your, they're like, I don't want it. Please get rid of it. I'm like, but it's yours.
Doesn't belong anywhere else.
It's like, it's not going anywhere. It's yours.
Yeah.
If it's something that doesn't belong, I will take it out. I have no problem. Gone, not yours, right?
Yeah.
But if it's yours, I'm going to try and give it back to you because it belongs to you. I mean, I don't want it. I mean,
Oh, here, let me have some of that. No.
I got plenty of my own anger. Thank you very much.
Right.
But with that particular, um, what happened with that is like, I was like, just hold out your hand and just let's talk with it. What it wants. And, let's see what it needs from you. What does it have to share to you? What does it want to give to you? And, through that process, it transformed and, became this wonderful golden energy and transformed into wisdom. And I'm like, this is what you wanted to throw away.
Right.
So, you want to be full. Like, because we give ourselves away, we throw ourselves away. Um, we shame ourselves. And it's really, and I do it myself.
Yeah.
And you have to catch yourself when you're like, you start feeling really bad and start thinking, well, what have I been saying to myself? How have I been treating myself? How have I allowed other people to treat me?
Hmm.
Um, but, reconnecting with our inner spirit, our strengths, removing the blockages, removing and helping to repair energetic damage through the system is kind of a starting point. And sometimes that's all I need to do with somebody. And sometimes it's all they need to feel better. But a lot of times, they'll have that initial, but then they have to do something as well to really set that in
Hmm.
so that it doesn't just keep happening.
Right. We're so we're just addicted to our patterns, right? We just want to fall
Mhm.
back into it because it's what we know. So you kind of serve as that intervention there when you do the practice,
Mhm.
remove it or give it back, have healing
Right.
around it, and then it's up to the client to go out and live their life and to be consciously aware of making that a new program and then
Yeah.
coming back to you to help kind of adjust.
Right. My ideal, like some of my best clients, I'll do a session for them and then I won't hear from them for a year or two
Right.
because they don't need to see me again for a while. Um, if there's someone that, unless they're in the midst of crisis and trauma, that can require some ongoing, support while that is happening. But for most people, you don't need to see me every month. I mean, you don't,
Yeah.
that's just not how that works. Which is not a great business plan, but you know, it is what it is. Building dependence in is not a good business plan either.
Right.
Um, so
We have to be self-reliant eventually, right?
exactly. So, and you do good service for someone, they'll be grateful and they'll tell other people,
Yeah.
oh, you need to go see, that helped me a lot. And that's where I try to be, is in that space. Really good work, and because I've done good work, more work comes my way. Um, so that's kind of how I said it's a longer growth trajectory, but it's starting to come together.
Well, and you have, so that would be what you were just talking about would be like a one-on-one session with you. And
Hmm.
you can do that. Can you do that both virtually and in person? Or you,
Oh yeah, like even before this crisis hit, like 90% of my stuff was done at a distance,
okay.
um, because most people find me not locally, but through my YouTube channel.
Okay.
So I would do stuff either via Skype or like a conference call number, and just be on and go through, send them a picture of what I've done. I set up the altar for them, and at the end I'll send them a picture of that in the email, and we work, go through it that way. But yeah, most of my clients are distant, just even before this.
So you have a YouTube channel,
I
and
do.
then what else are you, where else can people find you? What else are you a part of that people can subscribe
Sure.
to or find
Yeah.
information?
Well, I started a Patreon account this year, sort of to go with my YouTube channel, as a way that people could support me um, for like a very small fee each month, and then still get something out of it. So, and actually, of the things that's happened in the last several months, that's the thing that I've really been most proud of and excited about, because I feel really good about that work, because there's really a two-way give take.
Hmm.
Um, so I, for at least 6 years now, have done a weekly prayer ceremony every Friday. Because you've been on the prayer list for several years.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, that has just become a cornerstone of my practice. And so that goes out now till 5 different continents. There are people that are on that list on 5 different continents.
That's
I
awesome.
know. I'm like, wow, I'm still waiting for South America.
Oh, really?
I still do one. That's it.
Oh, I need to talk to some friends.
Yeah,
I
I
know
need
some
to get
people.
on there.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, yes, all 6 inhabited continents. That'll be like, I'll have a little party that day. But I've been doing that for so long, and so I was like, there's all these people that watch me on YouTube that ask me for prayer. I was like, why don't I just add them to this list by supporting me? And I was like, well, I need to give them something extra because there's people that are already on that list that don't do that. Um, so once a month, I do a teleconference with my Patreon supporters where we do sort of a group exercise, and I do shifting for the group. I do work for the whole group.
That's awesome.
Um, and that pretty much just for patrons. It's recorded, so if they can't make that call because they're in different time zones, so it's hard to get everybody on there,
Right.
they can go back and listen to it. And so I've been doing that since September, I guess, is when I started that. And I've really, that's the thing that I've done in the last year that I'm really excited about.
Well, I am definitely signing up for it after we get off this
Yeah,
call because you did the fear meditation right when
right.
all of this pandemic started, and it was incredible. Everybody was just talking. I felt like the feeling was just you don't be fearful, whereas your meditation was just again like making friends with it and acknowledging it and recognizing it. That was awesome. And then I did want to mention you do a Friday ceremony every
Mhm.
week, and this is the email list you're referring to. So yeah, I've been a part of that for years now, and I look forward to it in my inbox every Friday. But what exactly does that entail? What goes into that ceremony?
Okay, so that has been an evolution too. So everything that I do seems, just sort of grow and shift over time and adapt. And that came out of an experience I had with somebody I was in a program with, a 2-year training program, and they came and they presented the Blessing Way ceremony at a Tuesday night meditation that I went to. And because they weren't Navajo, but when they were a child, they would go and spend time on the reservations, and they were basically adopted by a set of Navajo grandparents. So they had their set of biological grandparents, and then they had a whole other set of grandparents when they would go and stay in the summers. And so they learned the Blessing Way from them. And they had said, at the end of this presentation, it's like, now you can go and create your own, Blessing Way, your own ceremonies, your own. And I took that idea and I was like, yes, I shall do this. But I wanted to make sure it was something I could keep up because, you start with great intentions and then life happens, right? So I wanted to make sure very simple to do. So because, you get sick, you're traveling, something happens. So my baseline for ceremony is that I have to have a rattle and I have to have my mesa, and I sit there and I shake my rattle and I pray. So if I'm feeling ill, and that's happened a couple times over the year where I shake that rattle for a few minutes, I give thanks, and then I say whatever the prayer is and say. Now, when I'm fully functional, it's a little bit more. I will usually open up my mesa. I will set it up however it feels like it needs to be. I actually did a video on that, like how I create my ceremony. It's like
Oh,
15
cool.
minutes long. Um, it's more informative than anything. Um, and I set it up until it feels right, and then I go and it's now become before the prayers happen. I rattle and I thank. I give thanks to the Creator, to the earth, to all the different elements, all the different helpers that have touched my life and that have worked with me at any point in the past. And that can take a long time.
I bet.
Um, and then I go through whatever the prayer. And the part that is inspired by the Blessing Way is that I pray for myself in all my relations. So I add in all my relations. So when you're on that list and I go down to your name, I'll say the prayer for you and all your relations. So it's, for you and your family. So,
That's beautiful. Thank you for
so
doing that.
Yeah, and it's really become important. Like I have that standing date every Friday.
I know.
That
I am blown away at your consistency. Like in the 5 years we've been in business, I don't know that there's anybody that I've come into contact with that has been that consistent with something every week.
it does not happen at the same time of the day.
I mean, come on, who are you? Right? Like every Friday, there's an email from Thomas Mooneagle with a beautiful,
There is.
yeah, mesa set out.
Now the funny thing was is that a few years ago I did do the prayer, but I was out of town and I didn't know if I was going to have internet connection.
You still
So
sent it through.
I sent it through.
Yeah.
I did. Even if you don't get that email because I forget to send it before I go to fall asleep, the prayers have been done. I swear.
Yeah. It's,
Um, and it gets posted to Patreon first because I can do that right from my phone
yeah.
wherever I am. So there's proof. Um,
I, yeah, I've seen it.
but
I'm a
what
witness.
had happened was this was after a few years of doing it. I had forgotten to send an email to one part of the prayer list that I was going to be in contact. And then my intention was to send pictures of both prayers the next week. So I didn't do that. Apparently, didn't go through to some of them. I got all these emails from people that I was okay, that I wasn't in the hospital or hadn't been in an accident because they were so used to seeing it every single week, it never without fail, that they thought something terrible had happened.
You are very loved.
So,
Yeah.
like, where's my prayers? No.
That's
Prayer
great.
mafia.
Need my prayers. Oh man. Well, I think that's all I have. Thank you so much for speaking with me. I appreciate you were my first go at this, so I appreciate you joining on and giving us all of your insight and your YouTube. They just Googled Thomas Mooneagle.
Yep, that's
Okay.
it. Should be right up there, and that has links. I've cross-linked everything, so if you don't find my website, which has links on the About Me page to like all my channels and Patreon and such, so it all links back together as well. So I've been very diligent the past few weeks in making sure.
It's a good time to do that, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good time to update everything. So
Great. Well, thank you so much, and I look forward to that email ceremony on
yep,
Friday.
just a few more days.
Yeah, right.
All
Thanks, Thomas.
right.